Can we see that?
So it goes all the way up on my shirt.
Oh, wow.
So it's Jafar and Hades, and there's Cruella de Vil, and there's the Wicked Witch. I've got
no way.
I've got Waldorf and Statler and Miss Piggy and Kermit and all of them. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That's a Fact.
Always be yourself, no matter what.
Love by intuition and experience.
You are liberated in the freedom of your pleasure and your pain.
And I design joy. And that's a fact.
And that's a fact.
And that's a fact.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That's a Fact, the show where we are navigating the facts around femme stories that you need to hear. I am your host, Kirsty Adams, and I have a very special guest who has journeyed through the condition called Lipedema, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and also has taken the liberty and the empowerment to go through compression therapy, otherwise known as the tummy tuck. Welcome to Cara Cruz. Thank you so much for being on the show. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great.
So we have a couple of questions, naturally, as we do on That's a Fact for you. We're going to get started and just to navigate everything about your story with Lipedema. So this is question 1.
Okay.
Hera, how do you identify?
She, her, just... it's rare that I actually even get asked. It's normally just mom or the internet world calls me Pale Ginger Pear or PGP. So yeah, I answer to just about anything.
Where are you right now and why?
I am at my house in Pennsylvania in the US. So kind of East Coast. For those of you not super familiar with the United States and where we all kind of land, but I'm just home. It's supposed to be a day of work, and I'm in this area because I grew up here and kind of just kept getting pulled back to help out family, but I would gladly move if the opportunity arose.
Why the alias Pale Ginger Pear?
Well, when I started my Instagram, I was just gonna do ginger pear, but that was already taken by some restaurant or something. So I had to come up with like another thing, and I am extremely pale and almost see-through, and ginger was for the hair. And then before I started the lipedema removal surgeries, I was extremely pear-shaped with 72-inch hips because of the lipedema. So it just kind of played on like my physical appearance.
What exactly is lipedema?
So lipedema is a connective tissue disorder, which is where the body makes an overabundance of lymph fluid, and instead of it just flushing out through the lymph system and out of the body, the fat cells absorb it. So when they absorb it, they become these larger hard nodules, and they can be like tiny, they can be larger chunks. It all just depends on how your body reacts and absorbs it. And so those large nodules are extremely painful. They're really tender to the touch. You can feel them and see them under the skin. And that's what's causing the pain with the lipedema. So they need to be removed through surgery. They don't react to diet or exercise anymore because it's not a typical fat cell. Once it's absorbed, that lymph fluid, it kind of changes the makeup and the construction of the cell.
And when did you start developing signs of lipedema?
Well, there's pictures of me at 8 and 9 where I can see the column legs starting, and there's pictures of me as early as 3 standing in the inverted Y, and that's where like your knees are together and your ankles are out more, which is a common lipedema stance. My legs were always covered in bruises, and so it started for me early on. It can be genetic. So the thought is it's been passed down through my family, and so I definitely have had it for like as long as I can really remember looking back, but I personally really noticed it Probably around like 13 or so, all my friends started to get boobs. I got hips. It can kick in with hormones. So a lot of people or a lot of women experience it around puberty, pregnancy, or menopause. Those hormonal factors do something to the body. They're not 100% sure yet. And it causes the body to make the lymph fluid, which then absorbs it.
So basically you're saying you can start between age 9 and your teenage years.
Yeah. And some women don't start that early. It's more with their pregnancy that it kicks in. There's been women that have been fine and then menopause kicked it in for them. So it's really all individualized. And then there's some that have it like the more hereditary form, and it's always just been like a gradual progression for them and no major event. Like they didn't have a kid, they're not in menopause yet, they've just kind of noticed it progressing, that's been their body shape.
There's lipedema and lymphedema, 2 diseases. Is there a relationship between those 2 diseases? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, so I actually have both. So lymphedema is where the lymph channel gets damaged, and so the lymph fluid flows down properly but then can't flow back up. So I compare it to like a hose that you kink, so like the water can't keep going.
Right. Okay.
So I have lymphedema in my lower legs, and that is like my left leg is worse from an injury. So I injured my left leg, it damaged the lymph channel, and so then the lymph fluid would flow down, but then it couldn't flow back up properly, and so my left leg would swell really bad in the front. That's actually kind of how I found out about both conditions, is because I was getting treatment for it, and I was complaining to my physical therapist, and she was like, oh, you're not going to lose weight, you have lipedema as well. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, it's a special fat. She's like, it's a special fat that doesn't react to diet or exercise. You're pretty much going to be that way. And I was like, oh. But lymphedema can be men, women, children. It doesn't matter. Anybody with a lymph system, which is everybody, can have an issue where an injury causes it, or there's primary lymphedema where you're born with it and it's just not, like, something in your lymph system didn't develop properly, so it pulls down and doesn't want to flow back up, so you have swelling. It can be arms, legs, it could be one arm, it could be both, it could be both legs, one leg. Like, it doesn't have a pattern, where lipedema is typically both arms, both legs. Lipedema is also in the stomach. Right. So it can be in the breast. It can be anywhere you have fat, lipedema can grow. So it's
okay. So in terms of your lipedema, did you grow it in all areas of your body or just your legs? Because you emphasize your legs.
My legs were the worst. And for the longest time, I thought I just had it in my legs, because when I was first told about it, I was told that it was like a waist down thing. And so I just kind of was like, okay, so that explains the hips and the thighs and the legs. And then when I started my Instagram and started really like kind of digging into more doctors that were posting about it, then I found that it was the reason for my bigger upper arms. And I was like, well, that makes sense. My upper arms look exactly like that, where the top half is that big bingo wing. And then doing a little bit more research, and I thought I had it in my stomach because I could feel the nodules and I could see them if I leaned forward, like you could see the skin ripple. So I thought I had it in my stomach, but it wasn't really talked about at the time of being in the stomach. So when I went out to the consult for my now surgeon, I was waiting. I didn't want to mention it because I didn't want him to think I was like crazy and try to blame like all of my fat on this condition. And I was sitting there, in the robe, and he's like, can I touch your stomach for a minute? And I was like, sure. And he grabbed my stomach and he was like, this is all nodules. And I was like, I thought so too, but I didn't want to like say anything.
Wow.
And he made the nurse that was in the room with us, he was like, feel her stomach. And he was like, it's all nodules.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So at this point, you were probably thinking, how is this not researched?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Really frustrated because he was like, you're the poster child for this condition. He was like, you have it legs, arms, stomach. He's like, you have the butt shelf. He was like, you have it everywhere you can have it. He was like,
what exactly is a butt shelf?
So,
Am I asking something inappropriate?
Yeah. So we've all seen the butts that they're wide, but they're not really curvy. They kind of like come out and then drop off. Where people joke like you've got a shelf, you can almost sit something on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the butt shelf, and that's
like the one that Kim Kardashian tried to use to break the internet.
Yeah, the one she purchased.
Okay, and do you feel like it's better researched at this point in time? Because back then, what year was it that you were being diagnosed?
So I was first mentioned it. So my timeline is really kind of spread out. I injured my leg in like 1999, 2000. Didn't get help for it until 2008. And that's when I started the lymphedema wrapping and compression stockings for my lower legs. And then 4 years into that is when the physical therapist was like, oh no, you have lipedema as well. You're not going to lose the weight. So my first acknowledgement and kind of diagnosis of lipedema was in 2012. 2018 is when I found out it could be my arms and possibly my stomach. Not just and then
that's late.
Yeah. And then my consult with my surgeon was 2019. And that's when it was confirmed that yes, you have it everywhere. And that's when we started my surgery game plan. And then surgeries started in 2020. So I haven't gotten relief from this until just last year. And I will be 40 next month.
Wow. Yeah. That's insane. And did you catch these surgeries just before COVID started?
So the very first one was right before COVID started. And then my second one was in May, right as COVID was lifting a little bit the first time, but it was the weekend of the George Floyd riots here in the US. So I get out to LA, I have my surgery. The next morning, there's the riot, and LA's in a lockdown. So I'm out in LA, can't go anywhere, can't do anything, and I'm just sitting in an apartment. And then the third surgery was in October, and the restrictions were a little bit lifted. You had to like have a mask to fly. I had to have the COVID test to make sure that I was negative to have surgery. And then my fourth surgery was just this February, and that was the tummy tuck. And then my fifth surgery was just this August.
Wow, what a journey. And it's been that many years. And when you finally get diagnosed fully, you're in the midst of a pandemic, let alone a huge riot. I imagine that would have been crazy around that time.
Yeah, it's been definitely a roller coaster of emotion. And I joke that I would have spent last year in my house recovering anyways. I just made the whole world do it with me. And you know, but no, it's been great. It worked out oddly to my benefit. I ended up switching jobs right at the beginning of March, and then the world shut down. So what was supposed to be a temporary job ended up lasting to this day. I'm still working there, but they have been incredibly flexible with me taking time off for surgery. They allowed me to work from LA if I need to. I work from home now, so I work out of my bed most days. I have like a desk that rolls up to my bed, so I can elevate my legs. I can recover without, an issue. So it's really worked out to my benefit. Which kind of sounds like a horrible thing to say, but it ended up being really easy journey when I thought it was going to be a struggle.
That's really relieving to hear, actually. And if we may ask, what do you do for a living?
So my day job is for a credit card company. I'm like behind the scenes, updating their information when they send in like proof of address, figuring out fraud stuff that they like, I didn't use this for this purchase, and or I never got my card, so all these purchases aren't mine, and just kind of investigating whatever they send in to us.
Sounds really handy. And also, it sounds like the virtual work life is treating you or benefiting you, considering the conditions and the posture. Speaking of posture, do you still suffer from any postural conditions as a result of lipedema or maybe the tummy tuck?
My posture and my ability to walk has improved greatly. I mean, the tummy tuck alone was like 3.5 feet of skin that weighed 20 pounds that they took off.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was a ton, and it was all nodules. I did post it like in my Instagram. It's kind of buried so that people don't instantly see like medical gore. But it was a big surgery compared to like my other ones, which were just more like the liposuction, smaller incisions. This was hip to hip on, huge hips, and it was a big surgery, but it took so much weight and pressure off of my back. It wasn't pulling me forward anymore. I could walk longer. I could like walk with ease. With every surgery, it has gotten easier to do day-to-day little things that like the rest of the world doesn't have to think about.
Okay. Are there any activities that you are prohibited to do as a result of the condition, as a result of the tummy tuck?
Not that I can think of. If anything, I could do like more stuff that I just wasn't able to do before. I mean, of course, like right after surgery, you have to be careful because you don't want to like, open any incisions or overdo it. The only thing that I know is kind of recommended for us not to do is to be like in a hot tub, because the high heat of the water causes swelling. So that can kick in the lymphedema, lipedema in like the legs or arms or the limbs. Of it. So they recommend keeping the water like at a lower temperature if you do have one, or to be in for like short amount of times, and then when you get out, put your compression garments on, elevate your legs, or use like your pneumatic pump if you have a device that you wear to pump it out, kind of thing.
Wow. Are you allowed to have showers that are at bigger heats? Obviously, because you can control where you stand in terms of the shower, right?
Yeah, I mean, I personally like a scalding hot shower. I like that like almost boiled lobster feel. So I take extremely hot showers. I will even take a hot bath at home. If I notice that I'm having a bad leg day, like my legs are already puffier, sometimes I will wear my compression socks in the tub and have them keeping the compression on my legs in the heat, because I have a couple pairs. So if I do a pair to get ready for wash anyways, I'll leave them on in the water to help with compression. But overall, I try to listen and not do things that are kind of agitated or make it worse, because I do want the best results, because I am spending all this time and money to get the surgeries and recover from them and go through all of that.
Okay, let's talk about those compression socks. What is the sole purpose of the compression socks, and how many times a day do you have to use them?
So I wear 2 different types of compression. I guess technically 3 now if you count the arms. But I have my Medi compression, which is a flat knit compression sock from my knee down to my foot. I have open toed just because I don't like my toes being covered all the time. And in the summer, I like to be able to throw on flip-flops and like walk out the door. So I have from, ankle or foot to knee in that, and they are a level 30-40 compression. So they're a little bit higher compression, and that's to keep my lymphedema from ballooning up. It applies the pressure to the leg. So it's almost like when you have that hose that wants to kink shut, but if you apply pressure to it, it stays open. Right. So that's the purpose for those. And then I wear a compression legging, which is like a capri length up to right under my chest, since I had the tummy tuck as well. And that legging bodysuit kind of thing just helps with post-op swelling. It's a 20-30 grade compression. So it applies a lighter compression than the lower legs. And it just kind of keeps the extra lymph fluid that the body makes from being able to be absorbed into the fat cells to create more lipedema. It keeps the fluid moving. So if it's pushing it out and pushing it to keep moving, it doesn't let it get stagnant, then there's less chance for more lipedema to like build and grow. It helps with like post-op swelling. I now have an arm sleeve that I wear because my last surgery we did my arms as well, and it was to help with post-op swelling and skin retraction and all of that.
Okay. I thought I saw a tattoo on your arm, but is that the sleeve?
No, this is...
It's a tattoo. Okay. I have an actual tattoo sleeve. Can we see that? What is it? What is that?
So it goes all the way up on my shirt.
Oh, wow.
So there's Jafar.
Oh my gosh.
There we go. So it's Jafar and Hades, and there's Cruella de Vil, and there's the Wicked Witch, Wizard of Oz. And then up here, my whole upper arm is Ursula.
That is beautiful. Wow, it's all colorful and everything.
Yeah.
I don't have the guts to go and get something that colorful and that bold, but honey, it seems like you're rocking it quite well.
Well, I got my ink before any of my surgeries, and I got my ink before, well, my sleeve I got before I really realized my arm was lymphedema. And it was, I hated my upper arms. I hated how big they were compared to my lower arms. They stood out. I didn't like them. So I felt that the tattoo, in my mind, they were looking at it and not me. Like, if they were going to look, at least give them something to look at. So I have that, and then this is my left arm, and then my right thigh is a giant Muppet tattoo. I've got I've got Waldorf and Statler and Miss Piggy and Kermit and all of them. Yeah.
Back to your condition. Has there been any criticism about your lipedema, and how did that affect your mental health?
Oh, there's been a ton, especially before it's become so known on social media and stuff like that. It's a lot of like, oh, it's just an excuse like for why you're not dieting and exercising, or oh, it's an excuse as to why you're as big as you are. And, or somebody always knows somebody that had it, but keto worked for them, or, like they always know somebody, sorry, they always know somebody that some random diet or exercise plan helped reduce their lipedema. So I get a lot of, well, you should just do this, you should just do that. Well, my body doesn't react like your body. And
that must be frustrating.
Oh, it's so frustrating. Like I said, I will be 40 next month. If one more person tells me to diet or exercise, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, they tell me like I've never heard it before. Like, I've heard that. Like, I haven't gotten through 40 years of life and never been told to lose weight. That's all I've been told. I mean, doctors and, my dad and everybody growing up, it was, oh, you need to lose weight, but nobody gave me a solution. Nobody helped. And it was like so frustrating about it. So I'm tired of hearing the just diet and exercise like I've never thought about it. I'm tired of people assuming that I don't diet or exercise. I just choose not to talk about what I eat or what I do exercise wise because one, I'm not an expert in either field, so I don't want to give suggestions that could worsen someone's health and then it come back on me because I would feel awful. And we as lipedema women, and really women in general, have enough people telling us, well, this is what you should eat to look this way. This is what you should do to look this way. And I didn't want to be another person doing that. I just wanted to show that someone that was a stage 3, stage 4 lipedema patient could still go out there and live life. I'm a mom. I work multiple jobs, especially to pay for surgery. I have friends. I go out. I go to concerts. I photograph shows. You know, I date. I was married. Like, I just wanted to show that we can still have a life. We might have to take days to recover from having a busy day. We might have to plan ahead to what venue we go to because the concert seats aren't friendly for our hips. We might have to, you know, ask in a restaurant to not have the high bar stool, but to have a table. You know, there are things that we have to do, unfortunately, just to be accommodated. But I wanted to show it was nothing to be embarrassed about. Go do it. Like, you deserve to be out having fun. And so that was my purpose for it. I didn't want to be someone that was like, well, today I drank 3 protein shakes and ran 4 miles. Like, that's not what I wanted to do.
Cara, what is your typical response to someone that tells you to diet or exercise now?
I typically don't respond, especially if it's like on an Instagram comment. It's not worth my time because they've already got in their head that I'm lazy and I overeat, and nothing I say is going to convince them otherwise. Like, nothing. Every once in a while, I'll do a reminder post where I will show a picture of me before any surgery, and then I will show pictures of me with other surgeries, and I will point out, like, look, we've only touched the legs in this surgery, but you can see my stomach is smaller. We've only touched, you know, my legs and my hips in this one. And again, you can see the stomach and the arms are smaller. So clearly, getting rid of the lipedema is what's making my body work properly, that I'm reducing inflammation and size in areas we haven't touched yet. So I'll do reminder posts like that because I feel like visuals gets their attention more than me just saying I do stuff. And I mean, every once in a while I'll do like a funny reel or something like that. I did one the other day where I used like the voice of Simon Cowell where he's like, what do you think I'm going to say to you? No. And I've used that with the caption of like, every time I'm
That's
just
a good one.
To diet or exercise, you know, because really, if they knew anything about lipedema, it's that we have been told typically since an early age that we need to lose weight, and we're never giving a solution. And a lot of people are told to do some kind of gastric bypass surgery, and it works for some lipedema women, but typically the gastric bypass surgery only removes the non-lipedema fat. So the lipedema nodules and fat will still be there. And for some women, it made their lipedema more painful because that heavy nodules weren't supported by the other fat now, and they can feel it. So it's really all up to the person. And I mean, I personally didn't do a gastric surgery because I don't eat enough. I'm a very, very picky eater. I have celiac disease as well, which I have to be gluten-free for. So I don't eat a lot and I don't eat often. There's actually days where I'm like, oh, I haven't ate yet, I should get something. And I knew I wouldn't eat enough to lose any weight that you have to lose before surgery for them to even do surgery. And like, I talked it over with my doctor because my one doctor kept like, every time I'd walk into his office, he'd be like, you know, are you gonna do gastric surgery yet? And I would be like, this is what I ate for the week. How am I? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, you don't overeat. And I was like, no, I don't. Like, I don't. And So for me, I knew that the lipedema surgery was my solution. Not saying it's for everybody. I just knew for me, it was the route I had to go.
It seems like you're being second guessed quite a lot,
All
or questioned, or second questioned, let's put it that way, all the time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you have all the facts to provide that this is not a condition that is simply solved by dieting and exercising. It's a lymphatic situation, and that is something very difficult to get away. I mean, I've had lymph nodes before. I know the feeling. So I can, I mean, if in any way relate to that. So it's very impressive how you deal with all of that. And I imagine you'd have to slap on a filter, you know, for these kind of things.
Yeah. It's just, I know it's not going to go away anytime soon because unfortunately, fat phobia is one of the things that every other issue can agree on. Like white, black, straight, gay. There's somebody in all of those different groups that hates a fat person. So
that is very, very profound to say, because it's true.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so until the world in general realizes that fat people are people, it's going to be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that has to start with social media and media in general on how people are portrayed. If you only have like the stick figure models and actresses on all the shows, that's what men and women think women should look like.
True. It doesn't highlight the true person. And I think for someone with such resilience, I think that's a superpower, and anyone should be with someone with superpowers. So well done, superhero.
I mean, it's just sad too because women have it on a like another level because like the dad bod is popular. Everybody talks about the dad bod, but there is not one thing about like, oh, I like a mom bod. It's you should have the mummy makeover. You should get that tummy tuck. You know, that little baby pouch should be lifted and tucked. I just grew a human. Like you should.
Well, then for that too. I mean, I think it all comes down to the female body being hypersexualized in society, and still today. There are ways of empowering, you know, certain figures, and it's just that, you know, there are certain double standards that still occur today, and it is something that needs to be talked about. Hence, that's why we're here. So we've spoken a lot about your journey. Let's skip to the facts about this. So lipedema is often diagnosed as a lifestyle problem, as we've spoken about, rather than a genetic medical condition. And we've spoken about how you've dealt with it. How often do you, how would you advise someone that's dealing with this to deal with it?
Don't believe the lie. It's not something you've done. You haven't overate your way into this. You haven't made the wrong food choices. I mean, I guess to a degree you might have, but not knowingly. Like for me, one of my inflammatory foods is tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have ketchup or pizza sauce or tomatoes, I swell up and I'm itchy and it's painful and my lipedema hurts, but it's a vegetable or a fruit or whatever you want to call a tomato. But, you know, almonds are another one for me. I can't do almond, and I loved to snack on almonds. I tried doing keto for a while because it's supposed to be really good for the, you know, inflammation, but almond flour and dairy and almost all cheeses were on my inflammation list. So keto made me worse. Wow. So you could be making healthy food choices and it's not the right choices for your body. So
basically get to know your body.
Trust your body over the voices of other people. And there are multiple food allergy tests. Some are, hair samples, some are saliva, some are blood. Get a food sensitivity test done. Get an idea of what your body reacts to. Have a list and start to eliminate things and see if that helps your swelling. But know that it's not something you went out and purposely did.
It is mostly women that suffer from this disease. It has been estimated that approximately 11% of women suffer from lipedema across the world. 1 out of 9 women suffer from lipedema. And this is in America now, in terms of 1 out of 9, the ratio of 1 to 9. So how does America try to help with this minority statistic? And what is it that you do specifically to help change that?
So I don't think America is doing anything because most doctors that I've talked to or that other lipedema women that I have talked to all say, my doctor doesn't know that this is a condition. My doctor doesn't believe it's a condition. How do I prove to him that it is? So I always tell people, a lot of lipedema doctors recently wrote up the standard of care in the United States for lipedema. You can go with that document to your doctor's office. I go armed with a bunch of websites on my phone.
Right.
So if they question me, so if they question me, I can pull up websites. I now, after having 5 surgeries, I go with my own before and afters. So I'm like, look, this is why you need to prove me for the next surgery, because each one has helped me. Nice. I just try to be a voice. I talk to as many lipedema women as I can. Some days I can get to more than others. Sometimes I just need to take a break because some days it feels like my life is 24/7 lipedema, and that can get frustrating. But I know a lot of women feel that because it is a condition that you have to think about throughout your day, especially if you're later stages like I was. Before I started any surgery and I was 72-inch hips, I had to think about, will I fit in my friend's car? Will the seatbelt fit? Can I sit in the chair at the restaurant we're going to? Will the movie theater, like everywhere I went, I had to think about it. I had to think about how far parking was. I had to think about, is it a concert we're standing at all day? Because it's not good for my legs to be down. Like there's so many things that like an average healthy person could just go and do and not think about. And then also not think about how many days after the event do they need to recover.
There's a lot of administration around this condition.
Yeah.
And I imagine it has strengthened your mind and your organizational skills, just to be able to manage yourself and your body. So it's so informative, the way you're speaking right now, but also the way you've been doing research and sharing either from the people that you've done research from, like your surgeons, or speaking to fellow lipedema patients. So yeah, well done for that.
Well, thank you.
So the last factual question is, so the last statistic that I want to mention is that it's estimated that 15% of people with lipedema have a family member with it, which is something you've mentioned earlier that could be a possibility. Yeah. So the question is, do you in fact have a family member with the disease? And if not, how do they help? How do you help them understand the disease and understand that there's possibly a genetic connection?
So I do. My grandma actually has a diagnosis of it,
okay,
which surprised me because I have been talking about this condition for a couple years, and I remember talking about it once on Instagram. I was saying, I didn't think anybody in my family had a diagnosis, and my aunt was watching, and she texted me, and she was like, "No, grandma has a diagnosis of it. It's in her chart." And I was like, why was this not mentioned to me? Like, why was I not told that she had an official diagnosis? Because we live in the same small town, so I want to know what doctor that saw my elderly grandma that gave her a diagnosis, because my doctor doesn't seem to think it's real. But yeah, my grandma has a diagnosis of it. I thought she did before I had gotten clarification that she officially had one, because she
Right.
always hated her legs. She always complained about how they were like tree trunks, and she, as soon as it was like acceptable for women to wear pants all the time, she was wearing pants, she was hiding them. She complained a lot about them hurting. She always wore like compression pantyhose, like they weren't like the official stocking, like compression garments like I wear, but she always wore something on them. So I remember her talking about it a lot. I think my mom had it in an earlier stage. I think she had it mostly on her hips and thighs. And she probably would have been like a stage 1 or 2. She passed away 13 years ago from ovarian cancer.
I'm sorry.
Thanks. But she always complained about her thighs hurting. She always joked that, like, you know, whenever she gained weight, it went right to her thighs. And she was tiny, like she was a tiny, tiny woman. But she did have larger thighs, and she would complain about how they were lumpy. And knowing what I know now, it sounds like lipedema versus just regular cellulite kind of thing. My aunt, who is my mom's sister and, you know, my grandmother's other daughter, she thinks that she might have a form of it. Okay. So I definitely think that, like, I got it from, you know, my mom's side of the family. But yeah, it's just kind of one of the things they pass down, and
yeah,
it makes it a little bit easier when you have a family that knows about it and like is understanding. But then there's also several of my really close lipedema friends, their sisters or mothers are in denial that they have it as well, because they might not have it as bad, or they don't want to do all of the self-care that you have to do with it. They don't want to do the surgeries. They would just rather be in denial about it.
Despite the denial, do you think it's brought your family closer in sharing this genetic condition?
Not necessarily, just because by the time, like, my mom had already passed, if she was still around, her and I, she would be going to every surgery with me. She would have been talking to Dr. Jamie right with me. Like, she would have been my biggest cheerleader and on this, and she would have been great.
Shout out to Dr. Jamie, by the way.
He's amazing. Sorry.
All good.
But my grandma, she's in her 90s. She's now in like a facility. So when I do see her, we don't talk about like legs. I mean, we'll talk about like the surgery results, because each time I go see her, I'm different than before. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but she more wants to hear about if I'm dating somebody, or if, you know, what my kid's doing. She doesn't care about the medical stuff. So, yeah. And then my brother doesn't care. Like, he likes to hear, you know, he'll be like, oh, if you're feeling better, good. Or, oh, wow, those are insane results. But he's a guy, like, he just doesn't.
Well, I imagine that's kind of like relieving in a way, unless it's something that bothers you, that, you know, in a way, like it's almost like your family is avoided in a way. I don't know how you perceive it, but it might be a little bit more relieving that people just don't orientate your entire identity around this whole.
I always say, it is not your fault, and there is help. It gets better, and that's a fact.
Yes, honey, I agree.